On Life and Meaning is brought to you by Blumenthal Performing Arts, celebrating its 25th year presenting the best in the performing arts, sharing and employing the arts as a major catalyst to strengthen education, building community cohesiveness, and advancing economic growth. Further support is provided by Foundation for the Carolinas, inspiring philanthropy and empowering individuals to create a better community. And by the Arts and Science Council, Charlotte-Mecklenburg's resource hub and lead advocate for the regional cultural community, providing culture for all.
Most of the science centers that we know today in major markets either had a dramatic growth or they were founded in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We are the child of the space race, if you really want to think about science and technology centers. And so there's a new space race in front of us. There are new technologies being invented every day. And our role going forward is as an institution that helps people make their own personal decisions about what these inventions and advancements mean for their lives, their families' lives, and their community.
Catherine Horne is president and CEO of Discovery Place, a network of 4 science, natural history, and children's museums located in Charlotte, North Carolina, that serves local, regional, and national audiences. Discovery Place recently expanded its service to teachers and administrators with the opening of Discovery Place Education Studio to provide science, technology, engineering, and math professional development. Prior to joining Discovery Place in 2014, Catherine was president and CEO of EdVenture Children's Museum in Columbia, South Carolina, and served at the University of South Carolina in administration and as a member of the Museum Studies faculty. In this episode, we explore STEM education, whether a science center can ever get ahead of the innovation curve, and the importance of bringing museums to as many people as possible. I'm Mark Paris, and this is On Life and Meaning. Hello, Catherine.
Hello, Mark.
What is Discovery Place?
Discovery Place is one of the nation's leading science centers. We were founded in actually 1946, and we have been in the Charlotte market serving more than 800,000 adults and children every year for so long of 70 plus years.
What makes Discovery Place a leading science center?
Well, in the world of science centers, they are evaluated and judged really on the quality of their programming, the size of the audience that they serve, and the breadth of what we're able to do. Here at Discovery Place, we're very fortunate to have an aquarium, a rainforest, 2 theaters, including one of only 40 Dome IMAX theaters in the world, a very special place for teacher education, as well as more than 50,000 square feet of exhibition space.
Discovery Place is a network of museums. What are the other museums in the network?
Discovery Place started in 46 in a temporary home near what is today Central Piedmont Community College. And by 1951, we were in a permanent building on the edge of Freedom Park, the brand new Freedom Park, because of course Freedom Park was created right after World War II to commemorate the service of Charlotteans in World War II. And then from those early days in 1951 came an opportunity to locate a major science and technology center in an important but underdeveloped area of the uptown of Charlotte, so the Center Business District. And in 1981, we opened what has now become only the first phase of this building, and we've had 2 additions since then. Now we accommodate almost 2 city blocks in our programming. And then By 2010, we were beginning to open children's museums in outlying areas designed to be closer to the audiences with young families, children under the age of 7, to bring them into cultural organizations at a really important and pivotal time in their lives.
Catherine, what is the mission of Discovery Place?
So our mission is to inspire people to experience the wonders of science, technology, and nature. And the reason for choosing science, technology, and nature is that we believe that that best represents not only who we are, but the disciplines that are really going to be important going forward in our lives.
Is tourism part of that mission?
Absolutely, tourism is an important part of our mission. While 75% of our audience are individuals and families and schools that are from the Charlotte region, the other 25% are tourists that come from all 50 states and more than 40 foreign countries every year.
How does Discovery Place fulfill its mission?
I think we fulfill it in several ways. One is by being a resource for the community in discovering and learning the important inventions, the important discoveries in science, technology, engineering, and math. This is a very important time in the life of the world, but also in our community. So that's first and foremost. The second is it is about creating access for families who live of limited economic means. We serve more than 60,000 families every year who receive EBT and WIC benefits, and they're able to come to Discovery Place because of the support of our donors that make it possible for us to contribute more than $1 million a year of resources to those families, and they would have never had it were it not for this. The other piece that we do is we really elevate the importance of science for the community. Many people would say that's about making sense of science, translating what does this all mean. Mark, I've been working professionally in the area of climate science for almost 2 decades. And 2 decades ago, when you would talk to people about the melting polar cap and you would talk about, if there were changes in climate, it was hard for us to all imagine that this was actually something that was going to grow and that we were all going to feel the effects. Because when you look at a part of the world that you only encounter via the internet or news media, it's easy to say, well, that's just the North Pole or the South Pole. But in fact, today we could all easily say that the change in the frequency or the damage from hurricanes, the climate swings that we feel, the rise in even allergies because of the experiences that people have because they don't have good quality air. A lot of those things all come back to climate science. And the same thing is happening over and over again. That just happens to be the one that I think we all can touch, particularly after recent hurricanes along both the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic seaboard, that we see the violence of those storms, and we're powerless to change it.
Catherine, I want to pick up on 2 threads. One, the development of future engineers and technologists, and the second thread, basic science education. Why do we need more engineers and technologists?
Well, if you look at the growth of employment in this country and you look at the number of jobs that are being handled by a workforce that aren't located in North America, they're located in Southeast Asia and other parts of Asia or the Middle East, and really in a growing way, Africa, we find that our educational system, which has always been a leader in the world, and the growth of jobs need a closer alignment if we are to prepare a homegrown workforce. Because technology has made it possible for us to move jobs overseas. They don't have to be done by someone who is seated next to their supervisor, for instance. And so that's one piece. So those are, to a large extent, the jobs that require a 4-year college degree. The other thing that's happened along this same time frame is that we are seeing the beginnings of a huge exit of long-term career technical employees, whether they are in construction jobs or whether they're in large-scale utilities or manufacturing facilities. That workforce needs to be more highly trained and knowledgeable about the areas of STEM in ways that they can not only provide a higher quality of life for their families, but they can guarantee employment throughout their careers. And that's going to require a change in our educational system, not just in what institutions like Discovery Place can be, but how we do that together and in concert is going to be really important for communities like Charlotte and many others.
In fact, you've said, quote, more than anything else, we want to build a homegrown, talented pipeline for those jobs in engineering and technology in the future. Is that vision of workforce development your highest priority?
Workforce development is one of the tangible parts of our future priorities. It requires us to have the programming it requires that will attract youth, meaning those 12 and older. It requires us to be much more focused on the training of teachers and supporting evolution in what school curriculum needs to look like, which we are doing in various places in North and South Carolina. And it requires us to educate families about the opportunities that their children could have. We recently completed a special theme called the Year of the Engineer. And in that Year of the Engineer, our goal was to serve 250,000 children and adults in engineering-based programming, as well as to engage large numbers of practitioners in those fields, because the intersection of a young person with someone who does the job that they might want to hold one day is an incredibly exciting moment for that young person. We had a 10-year-old girl who wants to be an architect come in one Saturday with her roll of blueprints, which, we don't do a lot of blueprints anymore. It's always on the machine. But her parents had taken her drawings and blueprinted them, and she brought them in to have some architects and engineers critique them here at Discovery Place. Now, that seems like a simple story, but the opportunity for a child to have to interact with a professional, whether it be a surgeon or a technologist in a high-tech company or a practitioner like an architect or engineer, is one of those moments that child will carry with them the rest of their lives. And that doesn't happen in the classroom. It has to happen in the community setting. And so when we think about the third leg of our priorities, it's really about this accessibility piece and being the place where individuals of all ages are welcome and encouraged to be here. And they are able to learn about things that maybe they've heard about on television or maybe they've read about, but to understand it from a fact-based environment is incredibly exciting because it empowers our community to take better charge of what our opportunities can be.
Is there a crisis in science and math education?
Crisis is a strong word. And so what I would tell you is that most of our students today get some sort of glimmer about what they think they might want to be when they grow up, when they're in elementary school. The teachers that teach math and science in elementary school have typically had one science class and one math class in their 4 years of college preparation to teach. And it is difficult to think about a class in biology or a class in chemistry or a class in science methods as giving you all the knowledge you need to have to teach an inquisitive group of fourth graders or fifth graders and to feel confident and have the self-efficacy to be able to handle the questions, to be able to make it an interactive and inquiry-based experience. And so that is part of the challenge. It's part of the work that we do with schools and teachers. Here we are working with between 3,500 and 4,000 teachers every single year to try to help improve their knowledge, their use of technology, and their confidence to be able to lead their students in a way that really turns students on.
How are you working with 3,000 to 4,000 students to help them with their basic science understanding and knowledge, and the ability to have pedagogical skills to teach it?
Well, so we have a very special team at the Discovery Place Education Studio who that is their entire mission, is to train teachers. And we work with teachers in their own school settings as well as teachers that come to the Discovery Place Education Studio for more of a retreat type of session. Those programs are, in many cases, custom made to meet the needs of a school. There are schools that are becoming STEM schools, and they want us to work with their entire faculty to help them think about how they bring science to life in the daily operations of the school. There are other communities where we are embedded in community partnerships, and in Florence, South Carolina, for instance, we are working with the school district and the technical college system in that area around a coding initiative that the community has guaranteed the participating students a job when they finish the second year of the tech program, the technical college program. And we work with the teachers in the 11th and 12th grade to help them prepare those students to be prepared for the technical college level of that program. So those are pieces, but it's also important to think about what's done in the out-of-school environment, what's done here with science clubs, with the Girls in STEM initiative on the weekends, what happens in the summer with summer camps here and at various locations in our community to really inspire the learning to not just be 180 days a year, but to be 365 days a year. The last piece I'll say about this is that students don't opt into science, or few students opt into science. They opt out of science. Young children and even elementary age children are born with that innate curiosity about the world. And so we spend the better part of the first decade of our lives trying to figure out how to make the world work. And if we can capture their imagination and their inspiration at that point, we're far more likely to keep them in a position to grow them into being these STEM professionals and technical employees than we are to take a student in high school and say, don't you want to become an engineer?
It's one thing to inspire students about what they can create. It's another thing for students to consider what they should create. Does Discovery Place embrace a discussion around values?
Well, I think that the ethics around science have really evolved, and it is now not a discussion that's just held by those experts in the field, but it is a question that we all are asking as consumers, whether it deals with the use of stem cells, because we can remember not too terribly a distant future where we thought, oh, stem cells, that's, weird. And now we know that people have stem cells implanted in their knees to make their knees function better and simple things like that. I think the question is really an ethical question. And how can we raise citizens who are prepared to deal with the ethical issues that science and technology are going to present ourselves in such a way that we can bring the humanistic side, the community perspective, and the real science to bear in making those decisions. We also here at Discovery Place believe that science belongs to all of us, and that it is going to be one of the key tools in helping people understand how communities can be designed and function better, how citizens are given greater opportunity to live an equally productive life to someone that lives in a different zip code. We know that those technical niches, if you will, whether they deal with computer-related issues or whether they deal with ethical issues that confront us in science, it is an extraordinary opportunity to make science not something that those people do, but that it's universal, that it belongs to all of us.
Does Discovery Place in any way shy away from asking moral and humanistic questions around the science and engineering that it exhibits?
About 12 years ago, Discovery Place was one of the first science museums in the country to exhibit body whorls. And body whorls is an exhibition of human bodies that have been plastinated, meaning they've been preserved all the way down to all the arteries and veins and muscles and everything. And then they are exhibited in, various positions to enable people to better understand the human body. And at the time we did that exhibition, we assembled a panel of religious leaders, medical ethicists, physicians, to make sure that we were comfortable in how we communicated that. The same thing happened a few years after that with the inaugural presentation of an exhibit called Race, Why Are We So Different? And it really looked at particularly the difference between white people and black people. And again, we brought together these community conversations because our goal is to present the best science that we can present and to encourage and sometimes provoke the community conversations that maybe we're not even ready to have. I think about the race exhibit a lot. About that was at a point where the conversations that we're having in the Charlotte community today are different than that exhibition. We wish that exhibition had current science in it because we would certainly love to have that exhibition here for a long time. We certainly have a lot of exhibitions that we are offered that we are not able to take either because of size or cost. But I don't think that we shy away from bringing to our community in the best possible way what is good science that is fact-based. There are certainly and there have been experiences that look more from one person's point of view as opposed to presenting and even provoking a debate or a discussion between different prevailing thoughts.
How is the decision made as to what exhibits will be shown in Discovery Place?
We have a team of both science experts, staff. Our board plays a role in this, and there are certainly many more exhibitions that we could take than we do take. And so we are evaluating and looking at what areas of science we would like to communicate. We are looking at the innovation that goes into the technology and the type of presentation that is done, because we think this is a great way to showcase lots of different advances in technology in terms of presentation. And we're also really paying attention to where the community is. We're often challenged because we are making exhibition decisions sometimes 3 to 5 years in advance of an exhibition being here. And so you're trying to best guess the trends and the important topics as we look at it. There are certainly classic exhibitions. Dinosaurs will never go out of style. There are always more areas of the world where dinosaurs once roamed that still are producing extraordinary specimens and new findings around that. So it's an exciting time, I think, to be in this science world.
We have had blockbuster exhibits come through, from Body Worlds to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Is there one on the horizon?
Well, there are certainly several that are on the horizon. One of those, which will actually open later this year, so 2018, is an amazing exhibition about insects, and it's coming from New Zealand. So Charlotte will be the North American premiere for this exhibition, and it's traveling to major markets around the community. But it is about how scientists have used the insect world and the anatomy of insects to develop a whole host of scientific advances. And it also is a beautiful exhibition visually, in terms of you will fall in love with bugs all over again. You might have fallen out of love when you were about 10, but I promise you'll fall back in love with these amazing creatures.
Catherine, let's talk about this building that we are in. How would you assess the building?
I think that Discovery Place, both the science building and the nature building, both are facilities that have really served their audiences well. Discovery Place Nature, which is our natural science museum, is a very small structure that is 13,000 square feet, and we are over capacity most days in that facility. And yet that is the topic, that is the place where people fall in love with nature, near the center of the city. And then Discovery Place Science, while we have been able to invest in this building, we've been able to increase the size of the building, we've been able to refresh exhibitions, build new laboratories for science exploration. We are facing some challenges, both from the length of the building systems and the age of the building systems that provide heat and air and light and all of that, as well as technology that we have to have and spaces that we have to continue to deliver our vision in the future.
Discovery Place Science uptown is almost a 2-block footprint. Do you have enough space?
I think we have plenty of real estate. How that real estate is used to deliver a mission in the third decade of the 21st century is probably something that we should look at. We're a 2-story building in a growing community of 10, 12, 33-story buildings just around the corner from us or beside us. And we have to think about how this real estate is really used to deliver the mission.
Well, what are you thinking about? In some ways, it seems one could argue you have too much space.
Well, I would respectfully disagree with that when you see that we have lines out the doors on Saturdays and Sundays and holidays and summers. And so from an audience point of view, we are definitely space constrained. The world has to decide, how these types of institutions are going to be relevant in the future. Because as more and more technology is at your fingertips, either with your phone or with a monitor in your home, we have to think about the value of real experiences. Our research and in evaluation of our visitor, and certainly where education is going, shows us that the natural world is a really important place because it is something that belongs to all of us. And how we use living collections, both plant and animal, in the oceans, on land, in the sky, are a way to draw people to a love of science. And at the end of the day, we all need to fall in love with this topic because it's going to be the thing that makes our lives healthier, last longer, educate future generations, and why not have a great time doing it?
Let's talk about what is in the space. When you walk the building, is it what you want it to be?
Well, Mark, we have 3 elevators in 3 different locations. And for a visitor who enters our front door on Tryon Street and wants to get to their car in our parking deck, they have 3 elevator rides to take, to go up and down and then up again to get to their car if they've driven. And so we have to think about an audience that one day is not going to drive here, but that is going to come in a driverless car, through public transportation, on their bicycle, because there'll be protected bike lanes. And so we have to think about how different the audience is going to be in the future. We also have to think about hours of operation. We have 25,000 people now who live within walking distance of Discovery Place, and how is their experience different than the visitor who comes in from a distant state as a tourist? And so we're actively paying attention to those things and thinking about how can you provide the most enjoyable and enlightening experience possible. The other piece that's part of that, of course, is how does technology communicate our mission? And so much has changed since, I guess, Discovery Place had its first website 20 years ago. But today we're producing content that people can enjoy without leaving their own home, and looking for ways that we advance that work as well.
Is there a science museum that is a model for what you want to create?
I think that there are examples that we are all looking at to see how they would evolve. We pay attention to the advent of technology and how technology will be used in the future. The advances in science centers are most rapidly occurring in Asia and in Europe. And so we are actively looking at some things that are happening in sort of Central Europe, Germany and the Netherlands. But we're also really paying attention to, the fact that China is going to build 100 science centers, and that the science centers in Shanghai and Tokyo and Malaysia have really played a much deeper role with their communities advancing scientific literacy than the current North American science centers are doing. Most of the science centers that we know today in major markets either had a dramatic growth or they were founded in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We are the child of the space race, if you really want to think about science and technology centers. And so there's a new space race in front of us. There are new technologies being invented every day. And our role going forward is as an institution that helps people make their own personal decisions about what these inventions and advancements mean for their lives, their families' lives, and their community.
Is Discovery Place doing its very best to refresh a 1980s model as opposed to being at the cutting edge of what science centers should be in the 21st century?
I think that we have made small incremental changes over the last 15 to 20 years that are that keeping pace. And the question we are actively asking ourselves now is that enough? Or can, in fact, Charlotte and Discovery Place be a model for what the next generation science center can really be?
The bones of this building and the exhibits in this building go back to the 1980s. Can a museum of science ever get ahead of the innovation curve?
I think that every person would define the innovation curve differently. And what we believe is important here is that we equip people with the past and have the foundational knowledge to know where we've come from in whatever field of science, and that we give people a taste and an opportunity to experiment with where the future is going. Because the business of science belonging to all of us and being a lens from which we make day-to-day decisions and life-changing decisions is at the forefront of what we think about when we're thinking about the future of Discovery Place. The development of real property in terms of science centers is a very expensive and long-term endeavor. And if we were to start today and someone handed us a blank check and said, go give us a great one, don't just look at New York, don't look at San Francisco or Seattle or Chicago, but give us something that no one else has, it would probably take us 10 years. And and if we guessed at the science today for 10 years from now, we'd be dated when it opened. And that's the greatest challenge of this field, is how do you create enduring subject matter that can evolve as the science evolves.
It's one thing to be dated by 10 years. It's another thing to be dated by 50 years.
True. And I have individuals in Charlotte who remind me of the fact that this was where they first touched an IBM computer, was in Discovery Place back in the 70s.
We could probably still find one here.
No, I think we've gotten rid of all of those, Mark, but thank you. It would be in a historical exhibition now instead of a contemporary science exhibition. But think about how much the world has changed in the average adult today. And yet, Discovery Place, by Charlotteans' reflections, has treasured memories for literally everyone I meet in any part of this city. They all tell me their Discovery Place story. And so that sense that we belong to them is something that we really feel like we should capitalize on when we're thinking about the future.
Let me ask the question another way. If you were to start from scratch, would Discovery Place look like this building?
No, Discovery Place would look like a totally different building that would use the outdoors as well as the inside spaces differently, and it would provide a great deal more flexibility in terms of spaces and formats that we could use.
In 2010, Discovery Place completed a $31 million renovation of the building. What did we get for it? And are you not making a case that another round is necessary?
In 2010, Discovery Place got a much-needed facelift after literally 30 years of work. Everything from carpet to lighting to a new aquarium, much larger aquarium, new exhibit stories and experiences were all part of that renovation. About $15 million went into building improvements and about $15 million went into the exhibit and aquariums. And then we have since made another $5 million investment in new labs that deal with biomedical science and design thinking and engineering to make better use of our square footage. We have been moving and shifting and thinking about how we do that because it's important to continue to make those small changes. We also were an institution who people would say, the last time I was there was when you had Dead Sea Scrolls or when you had the Pompeii exhibition or Body Worlds. And so we are clearly the place that Charlotte depends on to bring blockbuster exhibitions here. But blockbusters are here for a short period of time, and our mission endures beyond what a blockbuster brings. And so we have to have the spaces in our buildings to teach, to provide change, to be able to easily adapt new forms of technology, many of which have not even been invented yet. And so we're definitely hamstrung by our current facilities. We, conversely, continue to innovate, think about how to use this building creatively, and have a few things up our sleeve that will bring some new life to this building.
And in fact, there is a new master plan that is being drafted.
We are working on a vision for what education needs to look like through Discovery Place in the future. And that work is continuing. It is I used to say a many-month process, but it's now probably, we hope it'll wrap up in the next few months. And we have had some really extraordinary thinkers and designers to help us envision this. And we have also listened very intently to what the citizens of Charlotte tell us about what they want to see and why science is important to them.
Catherine, let's talk about your life and how you've come to this work and why you're motivated to do this work. You are a child of the South. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I grew up in a small town in South Carolina by the name of Chesterfield. And my parents, we lived on Main Street. And so I'm a child raised by the community and was very fortunate to have great experiences educationally growing up. I was also a child of integration, and so I came to understand what it meant to treat people equally at an early age and to recognize that we need to create opportunities for everyone.
Tell me about your parents.
My parents were 40 years old and had their only child after 17 years of marriage. My father had been an officer in World War II. My mother was a school teacher for part of her life as I got older and before I arrived, actually. And they were loving parents, and they also set higher expectations.
You were the only child of older parents. Mm-hmm. How did that shape you?
I think it, first and foremost, gave me an extra-sized dose of responsibility. It also really gave me a great opportunity to be a creative thinker. My father was trained as an engineer, and my mother was trained in music. And so I sort of got the left brain, right brain thing. I think an equal dose of that is if you can have that. And so I enjoyed bringing both sides of that. And I had advantages to travel and to have summer experiences that many of my friends didn't have. But I did learn from growing up in a small town that you had this opportunity to treat people with respect and dignity.
When you were in high school, did you think you would be the president of a science museum one day?
I was really interested in chemistry in high school. I loved my 11th grade chemistry teacher. And he just really turned me on. And then my freshman chemistry professor in college really turned me off. And as they poor freshmen get, we often take those electives that you take. And I took an art history class, and I fell in love. And my parents, through our travels growing up, we had done a lot of museums. And my mother was a little bit of a collector. And so I don't know, it all came into relevance when the door of chemistry was not as exciting and fulfilling, and I couldn't see my way to get to I couldn't have a vision of where I wanted to be. And yet I realized that I had chosen my undergraduate school, which is Salem College, because it was set in the middle of a historic village. The losing school was the College of William and Mary. So there must be a lesson there about Colonial Williamsburg and Old Salem and being a place. But Winston-Salem afforded me an incredible opportunity to have a lot of museum exposure as an intern and as a researcher. And from there, the die was sort of cast. Now, I didn't see a science museum in my future at that point, I will say.
Well, Catherine, you anticipated my next question. You did go to Salem College in Winston-Salem, which is a women's-only liberal arts college.
Yes.
Why did you choose Salem?
I really fell in love with Salem as a ninth grader because of the setting. I wanted a small liberal arts school. I thought that was the place. All of my first cousins had gone to large universities, and I should say all 19 of them were some sort of STEM major, from computer science to veterinary science and everything in between. And then here I am, the art historian. And let me say, we didn't have a lot of science conversations over Thanksgiving dinner.
Catherine, after Salem, you went to the University of South Carolina, USC, and you earned a Master's of Arts in art history. What was it about art history that drew you in?
I really appreciated the fact that art history and certainly the visual arts are a window into the soul of what is happening in society. And so my work and my research has been most commonly in the area of the intersection between what is happening in the world and what the products in terms of fine arts and decorative arts and architecture are doing that manifest what's going on in society. Most of my research was really in architectural history and decorative arts. And so that built environment was really precious to me.
How do you think art history and your scholarship in art history informs your work today as a president of a science center?
I think that I understand the importance of how the message is delivered from an aesthetic point of view, but also from an interpretive perspective. And I believe that we have to make it engaging and beautiful, inspiring even, so that people will want to be drawn in, will want to try something that might feel foreign to them. And so that opportunity to use that visual literacy, which, I would clearly say in the Howard Gardner, what is your learning style? Mine is a visual literacy style and talent. And so recognizing that, and I feel very fortunate to have an incredible team here at Discovery Place who knows how to design and fabricate and install exhibitions that not only deliver great impact, but that also are very enjoyable to see, to touch, to feel.
Catherine, after earning your graduate degree, you went to work at Mckissack Museum on the USC campus. The focus of the Mckissack is Southern history and culture. What did you learn working there?
I took that first opportunity, which turned into, I think, 4 different positions over the next dozen years, as an opportunity to really advance my personal scholarship and research in the decorative arts. And it was also an opportunity where I gained an enormous amount of experience in working with federal agencies, particularly those who provide grants for important scholarship and research in museums and historical organizations. I also had a really amazing opportunity to interface with senior administration and many, many international guests who were visiting the university, and I was fortunate to be a part of a lot of that planning. So it was a job that certainly extended past the focus of a museum, because the museum is literally in the center of the campus. The other thing I learned, which I think is a life lesson, is that sometimes you have to punch above your weight limit. The Mckissack Museum was housed in a museum building that was the university library building. It had many, many architectural challenges in terms of space and the ability to take a 1940s building and make it fresh. But we created exhibitions and produced scholarship that traveled to the Smithsonian Institution, to the LA County Museum of Natural History, to museums across the country, from a museum staff of about 15 to museums that were many sizes, the size of the Mckissack.
In 1996, at a relatively young age, you became president and CEO of EdVenture Children's Museum in Columbia, South Carolina. How did that come about?
I had left the university a couple of years before that and had been doing some independent consulting and trying to balance my family life a little bit more than, flying off to LA or Washington or wherever the university was taking me. And so I was doing lots of amazing projects for clients in terms of fundraising and grant writing and museum planning. And it was at an early stage of teaching a seminar that I met these two women from Columbia who were trying to start a children's museum. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. And they cultivated me for a year just by staying in touch and talking. And then, then they were in the search for a director. And we ultimately arrived at the opportunity that I would join them part-time because I wanted to try to maintain my family life that I was working so hard to balance. And that lasted about 6 months before it had to be full-time. And what that work taught me was that if you build the right vision and you bring the right people along with you, you can accomplish almost anything.
How would you describe yourself as a leader?
I think that I am energetic, first and foremost. I believe that I am a quick decision maker and can be decisive when you need to be. I'm also a listener. I'm a absorber of information and a putter together of things, if there is such a term. I can take disparate pieces of information that come from different parts of this community or from corporate partners or our team, and I can make 1 + 1 = 10. I know how to work through people, first and foremost, because now I have a staff of almost 200, and so it's really important to give people an opportunity to do their work and to encourage communication and to be accessible. I like to see my team get a great win. Nothing brings me more pleasure than to see someone else feeling that they were successful.
In 2014, you became president and CEO of Discovery Place. Why?
First off, I was 90 miles away when I was being approached about Discovery Place. And what is interesting and unique about Discovery Place is we are one of a very small handful of museums that have multiple museums under one brand. And so the idea that you can customize experiences for different stages of a community's life in terms of young children, older children, adults of, various generations was first and foremost important to me and interesting to me. But the second piece was I thought that Charlotte had this opportunity and Discovery Place had this opportunity in Charlotte to focus on the community. And in 2014, Discovery Place had, in the last 5 years, opened a $31 million renovation of the Science and Technology Center, 2 children's museums, and was poised to open the Discovery Place Education Studio in June of 2014. And so there had been this huge emphasis on facilities, and it was coming at a time where communities across this country were beginning to cry out for, what about us? What about opportunities for my family? What about the future of the community? I can remember having conversations with board members, and they would say, well, what will you bring that's different? And I said, we will bring a focus on the audience and the community, and we will want to bring people to us, and we will want to go to people who we have not easily served in the past. And that's really what we've done. And so now there, I think, is as much commitment to the community and what does the community need from us as there is about what can we create and bring to Charlotte and produce long-term in the future. Because you've got to have, we're a bricks and mortar mission to a large extent, but we've discovered ways to be in relationship with communities across North and South Carolina in ways that 5 years ago I don't think we even had in our sights.
Catherine, when you look back on your life one day, what do you want it to have been about?
I think that my life can be best summed up as I was someone who brought museums to the people that we serve.
Thanks so much for your time today, Catherine.
Thank you, Mark.
Catherine Horne is president and CEO of Discovery Place. She earned a bachelor's degree in art history from Salem College and a master's degree in art history from the University of South Carolina. And now, a personal word. A moment ago, I received an email from the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic to the readers of the magazine. The email starts with a story about how in 1945, Vannevar Bush, then the director of the U.S. Office of Scientific Research and Development, the military's R&D lab, the predecessor to DARPA, published an essay in The Atlantic that would become one of the seminal pieces of technology literature of the 20th century. That's how the email begins. It notes how Bush wrote an essay entitled As We May Think, envisioning a device that could store all of human knowledge and which is mechanized so that it may be consulted with exceeding speed and flexibility. Today, we have smartphones, soon with flexible and bendable screens that call up answers to any question we might imagine to ask. The email from The Atlantic announced a redesigned technology section of the magazine to meet the demands of the moment. I could read popular articles about technology all day long, articles that explain what new inventions do and muse about the social and humanistic implications. This month in The Atlantic are articles about how YouTube's algorithms really work, the problem behind a viral video of a baby bear, whether Google is making us stupid, and future shock in the countryside. This month in the New York Times technology section are articles about artificial intelligence and counterterrorism, how internet memes become political slogans, and how a cryptocurrency millionaire wants to build a community in the desert based on blockchain technology. The last show I binge-watched on Hulu was Genius, the National Geographic series about the life of Albert Einstein, based on the book Einstein, His Life and Universe by Walter Isaacson, which has a special place on my bookshelf. How can anyone not like Einstein? His humor, his defiance of authority, his thought experiments, his passions, his principles, his outlandish hair, his ego, and humility. I'm interested in Steve Jobs and his reality distortion field, and Elon Musk and Tesla and the Boring Company and SpaceX and making humans a multiplanetary species. I'm interested in DNA and genome sequencing and life extension. I'm interested in the newest planes, trains, and automobiles. I could go on, but the point is that millions of people share the same curiosity about what's next, who's making it happen, and what it all means. Catherine Horne is devoting her life to sparking wonder in the lives of countless children and adults. She is changing the course of what is possible with every exhibit at Discovery Place, with every lesson plan shared with a teacher, with every starfish held in a visitor's hand. We are only as good as our understanding of our world and the places we might go. I would venture this. There is someone at Discovery Place right now whose name we will come to know. This is Mark Paris, and you've been listening to On Life and Meaning. Additional support for this podcast is provided by the UNC College of Arts and Architecture, celebrating a decade of creative education in the arts and design. Thank you to our funding partners, and to my teammates, Andy Go, producer of the show, and to Chris Curriton, Art and Media Director. This is how you can help. Please write a review on iTunes. It helps us grow our audience. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. And become a patron. We are on Patreon, a crowdsourcing platform that allows you to support what you value at a level you choose. Visit us also on our website, onlifeandmeaning.com. Thank you for listening.